Alright, so I probably should have used rock music for a film all about filming a rock documentary, but that's not really my style, and neither is rock music as a whole over the last few years. So the question is, how the hell did I end up filming a rock documentary with some of the biggest talents in the industry? The boring answer to this is that I had a contact reach out to me and asked me if I had ever in my life before filmed a live rock concert, to which I replied no, and then found myself going on a road trip with one of the randomest rock groups composed of Bulgarian but also international talents across Bulgaria, Germany, and the Netherlands. The more interesting answer is that I had the faintest understanding of what exactly I was doing. Just like I had no idea that the original 5-minute concept for the film would transform into a 50-minute documentary film, just like I had no idea who exactly I was filming. So, just to clarify this, because I'm sure I'm going to get crucified for this, not knowing who these people are before filming this project, but the most famous person of the band was Simon Phillips, drummer for Judas Priest, The Who, Toto, and other bands, as well as Ronnie Romero, lead singer for Rainbow, and newcomer Richard Grisman from the UK group The Riverhounds. Now, I very rarely talk about the technical aspects of filming because I don't think that I have that much to say about it, but in this case, it is something pretty interesting because we were a team of 2 covering a rock group across 5 different venues, across 3 different countries with the bare minimum understanding, but also the bare minimum equipment for filming something like this. In total, we were 2 camera operators, myself and my colleague, filming with 3 cameras, a drone, a stabilizer, a tripod, a slider, and that was basically everything we had with us. So that means no cranes, no dollies, almost entirely handheld, except for a bit of a stabilizer during some of the concert footage, and basically just rushing to make sure we got as much footage as possible. And when I say no preparation or understanding, let me take you back to this moment. 1 camera on the ground manned by my friend Nicola, while I'm running around with a stabilizer and a smaller camera, hoping that I've charged everything properly. Ultimately, it ended up being this constant running back and forth between the lower stage to the upper balcony to make sure that the top camera was also recording and that we weren't having any issues with the recording. And this is without knowing any of the band's music, which means that you have no idea where exactly to jump in for a shot, who is going to carry a solo, or how exactly a song is going to proceed. Now, what did all this chaos lead to? This right here is a burnt out ND filter on my cinema camera. You can get quite a good idea of how little somebody knows about filming concerts if they forget that lasers can actually damage sensors. Anyway, these slight technical things aside, this was ultimately concert number 1 of 5, from large stages to smaller ones, to tiny little concert bars in Amsterdam and underground clubs in Cologne. This was one of the most exhausting experiences I think I've ever had in my entire life. And I think the only moments that I woke up even slightly was from the pure loudness of the music being on stage and around the front of the stage for the concerts in the evenings. Here is some footage from my phone on the last night in Cologne. Alright, so I'm currently in the backstage, the floor underneath the stage. Staircase is there. And it's a bit surreal because it's the final concert. I don't think I've been this tired maybe in my life. I don't know. I'm trying to make it out through that way and not have to sign autographs. Oh, and that's that. Another project done. I don't think I've ever been so confused about where I am. And so ultimately, this wasn't a music video, though. It was a documentary film, like most of the projects that I end up working on. So the question is, what exactly is the most important thing to focus on, or what is the most important thing that I focused on when filming this project? Because ultimately, we're trying to answer the question, again, of how in the world did this band form to begin with? And the short answer, and probably the better one, is that a Bulgarian philanthropist with a passion for rock music and composing decided that he wanted to make a childhood dream of his come true, and that is to get on board a bunch of international musicians to play out some of the compositions that he had been working on. And so that was the main focus of the film, of course, is not so much the individual songs and the way they're played, but how did this actually happen? And so thankfully we had a bunch of archival footage that we used, looking back in time to the composer's first meeting with members like Simon Phillips and pitching the project to him, and we decided to interweave that in between the music and the footage that we had, of course, from the trip. And I think one of the craziest moments of this project, undoubtedly for me, was just the moment where I got to sit down with musicians such as Simon Phillips and Ronnie Romero and actually be able to interview them about their life, thinking about so many other people who would probably kill to be in my spot at that point, to be able to ask these music legends about their first moments playing music, about how they got into rock in general, and about how their career progressed forward. And for me, there was this almost surreal calm in those moments where I realized that I could ask absolutely everything. I had no stage fright in front of these people. There was no moment of fangirling because I really wasn't that familiar with their work. But instead, I could really delve into moments of their childhood, of moments first being exposed to rock music and how that shaped them, and their future plans, goals, dreams, ambitions. Everything felt like it was on the table. Of course, a lot of those answers didn't make it to the final cut because they weren't relevant enough for the project that we were filming. But nonetheless, it was fascinating to be able to get the opportunity to interview these people who I never in my life thought I would meet. But chronologically, everything started here in Sofia with the landing of the international band members and coming to play with the rock group for the first time, songs that they'd played remotely up until that point. It was a bit of a surreal moment watching Simon Phillips enter the room because this was somebody that clearly is a legend in his own right, and realizing that I had never so much as seen a photo of him in my entire life. I think for most people, including myself though, he quickly became a favorite amongst the group just because of his kindness and understanding when it came to just about anything. And so, we started everything as a classic rock documentary. The first moments of rehearsal and preparing, the first press conference, the first TV appearance, the first new concert location, the first lead up to a concert, and finally, of course, the first concert. And there was this feeling throughout the entire project that we were constantly on our feet, but not just on our feet, but having to almost all the time accept the fact that most of the footage that we had planned to film, that we had envisioned for this, wouldn't actually come to fruition, and just hoping that we had enough to work with to actually be able to tell a cohesive story. Now, and this will probably be for a different video on my channel, but music for me is everything when it comes to creation. It's the start of an idea, it's the formation of an idea, and most of my time I actually spend online on music banks looking at sounds and just trying to decide what does that particular song remind me of. Does it sound like fog and mystery? Or maybe another one sounds like nighttime and sleuthing through the streets of a dark city. And in this case, having to edit something to the sound of music that I wasn't familiar with, neither was particularly my favorite style of music, was something that was quite complicated. That was until I heard a particular drum solo between Simon Phillips and our very famous Bulgarian drum musician, Stunji.
So when Stunji comes on stage to play, it's wonderful. I love it. He comes on, he does a whole intro, and I'm watching it and listening and amazed. And but then when it's time for me to join in, it's total improvisation.
And immediately, in my mind, this became the sound of people gathering together for the second concert in Plovdiv. The packed entranceways, the quick last-minute things backstage, and finally, the scene itself.
Oh, you were looking for me. Leave out those pictures.
Another thing that I had wanted to try for a very long time was this idea of shifting between color and black and white in one video production. And I think this was mostly influenced by my childhood and watching films such as Pleasantville and other parody films such as This Is Spinal Tap, which I'm sure for rock fans is a very well-known film. But it's somehow this idea that the grunginess, the dirt of rock music that happens backstage, off stage, fades away as the actual band members step on stage and get ready for the live performance. And ultimately, I was really happy with this decision because it really broke down the different sections and metaphorically expressed this slow painting of a picture that comes to mind, for me at least, whenever I'm listening to any music and trying to put it to video. But anyway, of course, there was so much more to this trip, and this is probably a good time to bring in my second cameraman for the project and one of the most talented videographers in our entire country, Nikola Atanasov.
Утре снимам и ми звънат супер много и аз се опитвам да ги обаче по някаква причина дигам вместо да затварям. Не знам как става това, натискам червената слушалка, но явно съм просто много търсен тази вечер.
Да.
Добре, това ще си го кътнеш. Това ще си го кътнеш, да се върнем към основата. Най-якото беше от всичко. Добре, кажи си.
Не, кажи ти, започни направо там, където беше.
Добре. Най-якото от всичко в този проект беше, че беше адски интенс и като започна не спря да се движи 10 дена подред. Беше яко, че можехме хем да ходим до Варна единия ден и няколко дни по-късно изведнъж сме в някакъв бар под земята в Амстердам и оттам сме в някакъв бар под земята в Кьолн. И другото беше, че примерно един ден може да сме в театъра, следващия ден сме в шоуто на Цитиридис и на третия ден си хващаме самолета за Амстердам и беше супер разбиващо за мен, защото аз поне не съм бил преди това в такъв проект, където дни подред просто си 24/7 ангажиран, защото то не приключва в 7-8 часа, не приключва с края на работния ден, то влизаш и го живееш това нещо. Просто си в реалността, човек, просто си в момента, това много ми изкефи. Това много ми изкефи, наистина. Липсва ми този трип. Другото нещо, където извадих супер много този проект, беше това, че чисто операторски даже, ако го мислим така, понеже има толкова много локации, понеже е толкова документална стилистика, не е нещо разказвателно, не е нещо, което мога да планираме предварително, се наложи адски много да боравим с естествена светлина и това, което се предлага на момента, и независимо в каква локация отидем, ние не знаехме дали ще изглежда добре, дали е осветено добре, и просто винаги имаш един такъв супер малък прозорец на неща, които може да направим с това, което имаме, и да извадим максимално най-яките неща.
Трябва да избереш един момент от цялото нещо, като което вече е готов самия монтаж и всичко такова, кое най-много те изкефи, защото ти, разбира се, го видя в последствие, когато вече беше готово, едва ли не. Кое най-много те изкефи като момент в филма и това, в което стояхме да заснеме?
Той в началото май. Обаче точно когато са всички и когато са се прегърнали там и се готвят да излязат на първия концерт, и как ги проследяваме от коридора, от тишината там, как разговарят, как са супер спокойни, и в следващия момент това нещо се чупи, излизат пред тази публика и взривяват с някакъв рок концерт. И още този контраст между тези две неща, и то още в началото, адски много ме изкефи между тишината и разговорите и как са се прегърнали. И другото нещо е, че това са хора, които не са свирили много преди заедно. Тая отваряща сцена даде и тон, нали, за всичко останало. Не знам дали, защото е първото нещо, което видях, когато ми го прати, обаче аз като го гледах и още в началото бях такъв, yes, това е супер яко.
And that's that. a short look at probably one of the most random projects I think I've ever had and probably will ever have.